Hey boys and girls, it's Miss Hudson. I'm coming to you from Joyce Bullock. It's very quiet here. I miss all of you. The halls don't seem the same. But I thought I'd check in with you today to do a little read aloud, one of our books. Some of you may have read this. Some of you may not have read this. It's called The True Story of the Three Little Pigs. Now, before I read you this story, I want to talk to you about something we were working on before this long break happened, and it's called point of view or voice. And so I'm going to walk over and show you the anchor chart we had in our classroom. Let's see if you remember it. Actually, let me stand over here. I'm going to walk around a little bit. Do you remember when we talked about who was telling the story? We talked about point of view, the view from which the story is being told. The person who's telling the story. It could be a character, it could be the author, or it could even be a narrator. And we have three different ways we could have a different point of view. We could be telling the story in first person, we could be telling the story in second person, or we could be telling the story in third person. When we tell the story in first person, a lot of the times all of the time it's told by the story is told by one of the characters, and they use words like I, me, why, my, we, or our. So they use those words a lot when they're telling the story. The other one we see a lot of in first grade is third person. The story's being told by the narrator. It's the person outside of the story. Words like he, she, they, their, or even character names are being used. And those are the two most common types of points of views we hear when we read stories in first grade. So today, what I want you to do for me is, while I read you the story of The True Story of the Three Little Pigs, I want you to see if you can figure out for me who is telling the story at different parts. And so I'm going to read to you now the true story of the Three Little Pigs. If you hear all that talking in the hallways, it's Miss Yaden and Miss Sridhar and those guys. Now, everybody knows the story of the Three Little Pigs, or at least they think they do. But I'll let you in on a little secret. Nobody knows the real story because nobody's ever heard my side of the story. You see, I am the wolf, Alexander T. Wolf. You can just call me Al for short. I don't know how all this whole big bad wolf stuff got started, but I tell you it's all wrong. You know, maybe it's because of the wolf's diet. Hey, it's not my fault wolves eat cute little animals like bunnies, sheep, and pigs. That's just the way we are. Because if cheeseburgers were cute, folks would probably think you were big and bad too. But like I was saying, this whole big bad wolf thing is all wrong. The real story is just about a sneeze and a cup of sugar. That's all. So here is the real story. Way, way back, once upon a time, I was making a birthday cake for my dear old granny. And I had a terrible sneezing cold, and I ran out of sugar. So I decided to walk down the street to my neighbor and ask for a cup of sugar. Now, this neighbor just happened to be a pig. And he wasn't very bright either. He had built his whole entire house out of straw. Have you ever heard of such? Who builds a house out of straw? I mean, who in their right mind would do that? So, of course, the minute I knocked on the door, it fell right in. I didn't want to just walk in someone else's house. So I called out, little pig, are you in? No answer. I was just about to go home without the cup of sugar for my dear old granny's cake. That is when it happened. my nose, it started to itch, and I felt a sneeze coming on, and I huffed and I snuffed, and I sneezed a great sneeze. And you know what? That whole straw house fell right down, and right in the middle of that huge pile of straw was the first little pig, dead as a doornail. He had been home the whole time. Well, it seemed like an utter shame to me to leave a perfectly good ham dinner lying there in the straw, so I had to eat it all up. Just think of it as a big cheeseburger lying there. Wouldn't you eat it? Well, I was feeling a little bit better, but I still didn't have my cup of sugar, so I went to the next neighbor's house. The next neighbor was the first little pig's brother. He was a little bit smarter, but not much, because he had built his house of sticks. Well, I rang the bell on the stick house, and nobody answered, and I called, Mr. Pig, are you in?" He yelled back, "Go away, wolf. You can't come in. I'm shaving the hairs on my chinny chin chin." I had just grabbed the doorknob when I felt it. Another sneeze coming on. I huffed and I snuffed and I tried to cover my mouth, but there it was again, another great sneeze. And you're not going to believe it, but this guy's house fell down just like his brother's. And when the dust cleared, there was the second little pig, dead as a doorknob. Wolf's honor. Now, you know food will spoil if you leave it out in the open. So I did the only thing there was to do. I had dinner again. Think of it as a second cheeseburger, you know, a double helping. I was getting awful full, but my cold was feeling a little better, and I still didn't have that cup of sugar for my dear old granny's birthday cake. So I went to the next house, and this guy was the first and second pig's little brother. He must have been the brains of the family, I tell you, because he had built his house out of bricks. I knocked on that brick house, no answer. So I called, Mr. Pig, are you in?" And do you know what that rude little porker answered? He shouted, "Get out of here, wolf, and don't bother me again." Talk about impolite. He probably had a whole sack full of sugar in there and wouldn't give me one little cup. All I wanted it was for my dear old granny's birthday cake. What a pig. I was just about to go home and maybe make a nice birthday card instead of a cake when I felt that cold coming on again. I huffed and I snuffed and I sneezed once again. Then the third little pig yelled, "And your old granny, well, she can sit on a pin." Well, now, I am usually a pretty calm fellow, I tell you. But when somebody talks about my granny like that, I go a little crazy. Christian, I bet you can relate. Well, when the cops drove up, of course I was trying to break this poor pig's door down, and the whole time I was huffing and puffing and sneezing and just making a scene because I had a cold. The rest, they say, is history. The news reporters found out about the 2 pigs I had for dinner, and they figured a sick guy isn't going to borrow a cup of sugar didn't sound very exciting. So they jazzed that whole story up with all this huffing and puffing and blowing your house down business. And they turned me into the big bad wolf. That's it. That's the real story. I was framed. But maybe you could still loan me a cup of sugar. The end. I hope you liked our story, but before I let you go today, you know Miss Hudson's always got to ask you some questions. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to sit our book down on our bench, and I'm going to grab a marker because I want to know who was talking in our story today. So I have a couple of sentences from our story, and I want to know who said it. And so I'm going to ask you to help me out. I'm going to ask you who said these little sentences. I'm going to pause. I'm going to let you shout it out there at home. And you're going to tell me, was it Wolf that said it, or was it one of the pigs that said it? And we're going to see if you're right. All right? So, who said nobody knows the real story because nobody has ever heard my side of the story? Who said that? Wolf or pig? If you said wolf, you're right. Give yourself a high five. Good job. The next one. Who said in the story, I felt a sneeze coming on? Who said that? Wolf or pig? If you said wolf, you're right. Who said, and your old granny can sit on a pin? Who was that in the story today that shouted that? Look at my exclamation point. I know they were yelling. If you said pig, you are right. Good job. Who said, I felt my cold coming on? Who said that? If you said wolf, he had all that sneezing coming on, huffing and snuffing and puffing. Who said today, don't bother me again? Look at that exclamation point. They were yelling. If you said pig, he told him to get out of here and don't bother me again. You're right. And last one, who said, you can't come in? Another exclamation point. He was too busy shaving his chinny chin chin. You said pig. You're right. Boys and girls, I miss you lots. I hope you enjoyed our comprehension activity. I hope you were able to help me figure out who was telling the story in different points. Miss Hudson hopes to be able to do this with you each and every week. I miss you all, and I can't wait to see you soon. Bye.